of Motherhood Uncorked. I'm Cortney, your host, and I'm here this week with Leanne Townsend.
Hi there.
Who is a family lawyer and divorce coach. So she's here today to talk to us a little bit about how to move forward following a divorce as a single parent, as well as some co-parenting strategies.
I'm happy to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Are you ready to pop some bubbles?
I am.
We have the Cage Cork Sparkling Juice today. Peach flavor.
Sounds good.
Whoa. Did I get you?
Nope, you don't pull it at me. Just you got your carpet a little bit though. Oh,
that's okay. All right.
It's like fizzier than champagne, I think.
There we go. All right. Do you want to pass me your glass? Cheers.
Cheers. It's good.
All right, so to get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you kind of decided to start doing divorce coaching in addition to the family law?
So I've been a family law lawyer for a while, and I went through my own divorce also many years ago. And I found through my own divorce and then just what I was seeing with my clients and with friends I have who've gone through divorce, that, first of all, research shows that next to death of a spouse, divorce is life's second most stressful event. And so that's what I was noticing. People are, really traumatized and, often just under enormous stress when they're going through the process and even recovering and moving forward. And it makes sense because divorce, it affects all of the things in your life that are most important to you. It affects where you're going to live, your financial future, your children, how much you're going to see them, where are they going to live, and all of those things. And so I just felt that there was a need for something more of a support for people. And it seemed like a lot of the stuff out there, it was either kind of more of the technical or legalistic. There's legal support, financial support, and then there was other people who were just doing what I call more like the warm and fuzzy stuff, the self-love and the self-care. And I felt there was a need for something that really brought together all of that, because you do need all of that. And my background and skills I have, I felt that I could offer something that talks about finances, that talks about the legal, but also things like boundaries and self-love and self-care, and because those are all important too.
Yes.
So I developed it because I just felt that there was a need. And then when I started chatting with people about it, I got very positive feedback, and everyone seemed to be saying, oh, like, I really think that's great. I think there is a need for it. So it evolved from there.
Kind of like the whole package.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's like holistic, and it really is. It's got what I call the hard skills, the soft skills, the whole package, and because you need it. That was my own experience, and I think people really do. Or you can draw on more on the areas you need more than others as well.
Exactly. So, in your opinion, what is the number one thing that a woman should focus on following a divorce?
I would say, can I say two things?
Sure.
The one thing I would say for sure is self-care. I think that especially if you're a mom, we all have a tendency to put everyone ahead of ourselves. And when you're going through a divorce and it's already stressful and you're worrying about your kids, it's easy to not take care of yourself. And so just to get through it and come out the other end and not develop other problems because you're not taking care of yourself. I'd say self-care is really important.
Okay, so when you say self-care, you're not talking like go get massages and go to the spa for the day. I think it's like what a lot of people think of when they think self-care. What are you talking about when you're talking about self-care?
I'm talking about like things like exercise. I know for me, exercise is huge. It's my antidepressant. If I don't exercise regularly, I start getting down. So exercise is a huge one. It doesn't have to be, CrossFit at a gym. It can just be going for a walk. Just some form of daily movement, because physiologically that'll help keep your spirits up. And, even things, meditation, journaling, or other types of things. Eating healthy is another one. I think we have to be careful that we don't, like, sometimes I find nowadays it's almost like self-care can become a pressure too. It's like, okay, well, I didn't meditate and I didn't journal today, and I'm trying to exercise and I did my meals, and it shouldn't be like that. I always say, like, pick one or two things that make you feel the best and that relax you or keep you grounded, and then try and make sure you do those regularly. And if you have time for the other things, then that's great. And then the other one is just get comfortable with money. I find all too many women, even in 2019, like they don't understand money. They don't. Often still the male in the home is the main breadwinner, especially when you have young kids, and they're not paying the bills. They're not even comfortable necessarily with money and budgeting, and so all of that is really important. It's important, period. But certainly if you're divorced, because you're going to be responsible more so for yourself that way, so it's really important to get comfortable with that.
So when it comes to the financial stuff, what are your top tips to kind of learn it? Where should people be paying attention? Is it more important for them to be investing in their RRSP, or is it more important for them to be investing in their kids' RESPs? Like, where do they find their footing with this? Because, like you said, it is kind of, for most women, I think it's kind of foreign territory that they're going to have to explore on their own now.
Yeah, for sure.
Pause for a second. If you haven't got a divorce yet and you are kind of clueless to the financial thing, start asking your husband some questions.
Exactly.
To educate yourself about it, just in case you never know, find yourself in this situation.
No, exactly. And that's what I tell women is you've got to understand where the money's coming in and where it's going out. And if you haven't been paying attention to that and you've been letting your husband take care of that all the time, start getting involved in that so that you know where the cash flows are coming and going. And when you go through divorce, it's important to find, I think, also like a financial advisor that you're comfortable with. There's lots of great ones out there that you can work with and who can, give you the best advice for your situation, because, you mentioned whether you invested in RESP or an RRSP, that's going to depend on, your own situation. So somebody who has your full financial picture and can advise you is the best person to give that advice. But working within a budget is important for all of us, and not living beyond your means, as easy as that can be to do.
We're all probably slightly guilty of that every now and then.
I think I'm guilty of it too, despite the fact that I'm saying not to do it. It's hard, but it's, especially post-divorce, because there's less, you have double the expenses and less money.
Exactly. You really have to adjust your lifestyle, which can be a huge shock for you and your children to all of a sudden go from, maybe eating out at restaurants every week to now maybe going once a month.
Yeah. And that's where I think the guilt thing plays in too. I think as, when you go through a divorce, sometimes you might feel guilty towards your children that you want to be able to buy them certain things because you feel bad for them. And again, like, that's obviously not a good practice to get into. If you can't afford it, don't buy it just because you feel guilty. And kids also are very good at learning how to play, each parent off of the other.
Kids are good at doing that even if the parents are together.
That's true.
Okay, so following a divorce, obviously everyone watching is probably a mom, so you've got kids to play into the factor of your divorce, and I can't imagine how incredibly difficult it is to navigate, because depending on the situation of your separation, you're dealing with a new relationship with your ex, which could be either amicable or hostile.
Right.
But then you also have to figure out a way that you guys are going to parent these children together. So what is the biggest, in your opinion, the biggest mistake that you see couples making with their children following a divorce?
Unfortunately, what I do see a lot of is parents dragging their children into the conflict and trying to win favor with the children. It's like they want the children to prefer them over the other parent, or see them as being the preferred, parent to be with after the divorce. And so they do things to try and, by telling them things that really are not things children need to know about. They don't need to know if someone had an affair. They don't need to know, the ins and outs of why there was a conflict or why you're divorcing. They need to understand that they're still loved by both parents, and that both parents are encouraging them to have a healthy, strong relationship with each other. But I just find, it's hard because your emotions are taking you over, right? And, so you can't, in some ways, it's almost like your instinct is to want to slam the other parent.
Exactly.
And I think too, like, we're all,
that's what your friends are for.
Yeah, exactly. That's what your friends are for, your family, a therapist. And don't beat up on yourself if something does happen, because again, we're all human. And if I were to sit here and say, oh, I've never ever said anything bad about my ex to my children, I would be lying. You have those moments where you're in a heated phone conversation and your children are there. And,
exactly.
So I would say don't beat up on yourself if it happens, but just try to make sure it doesn't happen very often.
Okay, so then what would you say are your top 3 co-parenting tips to kind of make things go smoothly?
Definitely the first one is what I just said, that to keep your children out of it, and don't badmouth the other parent to your children, because that's going to end up just hurting your relationship with them as well. Anyway, as they get older, they'll see that more for what it is. So I'd say that's number 1. Number 2 is recognize that the healthiest scenario for your children is to have a healthy relationship with both their parents, and it's not a competition. If dad wants to have shared custody, and mom was home with the kids for many, many years and is now outraged that dad's son, now that they're getting a divorce, is saying he wants to spend more time with the children, you know what? It's good for the children to have time with both parents, and you have to take your emotion out of that and just encourage your children to have a good relationship with the other. Now, in some cases, the spouse could be abusive, or they could be, there's other factors at play, and of course, you need to take those into account. But if both parents are decent parents, children do better if they have time in a relationship with both. And then the third factor I would say is to be flexible with co-parenting. And what I mean by that is, when you divorce, you get a schedule of, what days the children are here and what holidays and all of that. And, those are great, and it makes things clear for everybody. But there's always going to be times when someone needs a change to the schedule. Yes. And sometimes that person is going to be you. So if you are really rigid with your spouse when he wants to change, then, you're going to get that same behavior back. Again, obviously, if it's happening all the time, that's a different sort of situation. But if it's happening once in a while, I always tell clients that you just be flexible, because you may need to favor yourself at some point.
Exactly. All right. So I guess what would you say is the best first steps for the woman to move forward following a divorce while she's trying to, deal with the fact that her whole world has turned upside down, potentially, she has to move, potentially her financial situation is completely changed. And now she also has to parent these kids, while kind of maintaining herself and not, going into complete breakdown mode. What is your advice for that?
I think the number 1 thing is to not be afraid to ask for help, because you need it. That it's too much for someone to bear all of that on their own. And so when I say ask for help, that could mean that maybe you do need to see a therapist. Maybe you need to work with a divorce coach. Maybe you need, maybe it's your friends. Maybe you just have really good friends and you can, rely on them. Maybe you need to have someone who can take care of your children sometimes, just because you need a break, and it's okay. But don't be too proud to reach out and ask for help, because you'll run yourself into the ground, and you're not any good to your children if you don't take care of yourself, and you run yourself into the ground. So it's really important to be willing to reach out. And I think part of what ties in with that sometimes is because people are embarrassed quite often, or they feel some shame about getting divorced, particularly if like their friend group isn't going through that. That can make it harder to reach out sometimes, and you just have to get past that because you haven't done anything wrong because you got a divorce. And you're only helping yourself and your kids if you do, take support from people and delegate and just reach out.
Even if that means, you put your kids in front of the TV and give them a bowl of pasta and you go in your room and cry for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Your kids are still fed and they're entertained, as long as you're not making a habit out of it.
Exactly.
The TV can help you out, or the iPad, momentarily while you get your shit together.
Exactly, like a timeout for mom. That's what I used to say with my own kids. Like I would go in the bathroom and lock the door and cry or whatever, and I just needed 5 minutes to myself or 10 minutes or whatever to just let it out, and then go back and tend to the kids.
Exactly. Because if you bottle it all up, it's all going to come out anyways, and you'd rather do it in privacy than all of a sudden you're at the store and it all just comes out in front of your children,
exactly,
in front of the public. Deal with it in private and don't be ashamed and embarrassed to have to do that.
Exactly, for sure. And then don't be afraid to just call a friend and say, look, I'm at my wit's end. Can you come over, or can you watch my kids for a bit, or can just to do those sorts of things. Acknowledge your own feelings and validate it. And I mean, I always say if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else is going to. And I think when you're a single mom, nothing could be further from the truth. So no one's going to swoop in and say, hey, maybe if you're really lucky, someone will. But so I'm like, if it's and say, hey, I can tell you need a break. How can I help you? Just that doesn't happen a lot. So you have to be able to say, you know what? I need a break. Can you help me?
Fair enough. Okay. So if you coach people through all stages of divorce, whether they're considering a divorce or separation, going through it, or have already gone through it.
Yes.
So where can the viewers find you online if they like to reach out?
I have a website, which is www.leannetownsend.ca. I'm on Instagram at Leanne Townsend Life, and I'm on Facebook as well. Leanne Townsend Lawyer and Divorce Coach is my business page. And I'm also on Twitter, Leanne_Townsend. So those are always, and LinkedIn. So you can find me probably on any social media.
Just Google me.
That's right. My website's a good starting place because you can find everything else there.
Okay, well, I will link, as usual, all of Leanne's online channels in the description below, along with mine. And make sure that you hit the subscribe button because I will be back here next week with another interesting mom and another topic to help you out and thrive in motherhood. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Cheers.
Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment letting me know what your biggest takeaway was, and share it with your friends. If you loved it, please subscribe, hit that bell to be notified of when I put out a new video, which is every Thursday, and hopefully I'll see you then. Cheers!